Most people don't realize this, but the Bible was never meant to keep you broke, stressed, or constantly worried about money. In fact, many of the financial struggles believers face today don't come from lack of faith. They come from misunderstanding how God actually works with money and business. You've been told to pray harder, wait longer, and trust more, yet deadlines keep approaching. Bills don't slow down, and the holidays don't wait for spiritual maturity. Here's the uncomfortable truth. God does not reward desperation. He rewards alignment. That's why some people pray every day and stay stuck, while others apply a few biblical principles and suddenly find doors opening. This isn't about luck, manifestation, or chasing money blindly. It's about understanding a system that has been hidden in plain sight inside Scripture, quietly working for those who know how to use it. And let's be honest for a moment. If you need $2,000 before the holidays, you don't need another motivational sermon. You need clarity, direction, and a practical biblical strategy that actually produces results in the real world. The good news is that God already anticipated moments like this. He built financial principles that work under pressure, in limited time, and even when resources feel small. This may challenge what you were taught growing up in church. It may confront comfortable beliefs about money, effort, and responsibility. But if you're willing to listen with an open mind, you'll discover why the Bible consistently produces builders, entrepreneurs, and problem solvers, not passive spectators waiting for miracles to fall from the sky. If you like our content, consider supporting our ministry through the link in the description. Because what you're about to learn isn't theory. It's a biblical secret that has helped ordinary people step into provision, momentum, and peace. And the real question now is whether you'll act on it while the window is still open. Why most people pray for money but never see results. Many people sincerely pray for money, yet their financial reality never changes. From a biblical perspective, the issue is rarely a lack of faith. It's a lack of understanding. Scripture shows that God responds to alignment, not desperation. Prayer is powerful, but prayer without wisdom often produces comfort instead of change. In matters of money and business, God consistently works through principles, not shortcuts. When people pray hoping God will override structure, they misunderstand how He designed provision to flow. The Bible quietly exposes this tension in James 2:17, which reminds us that faith without works is dead. Prayer initiates direction, but action activates results. Many believers ask God to make money appear while ignoring the systems He already placed within reach. They wait for a miracle while walking past opportunities disguised as responsibility. Biblically speaking, prayer is not a replacement for obedience. It's an invitation to strategy. God answers prayer by giving insight, not by bypassing process. This misunderstanding creates a dangerous cycle where people become spiritually active but financially passive. They attend services, repeat declarations, and fast, yet avoid learning how money actually works. Proverbs 4:7 states that wisdom is the principal thing, and wisdom always precedes increase. In modern terms, wisdom includes understanding cash flow, basic business models, and value creation. God is not offended by planning. He authored it. Luke 14:28 even shows Jesus teaching financial foresight before building anything of value. Practically, this is where many miss the opportunity right before the holidays. They pray for extra income but never ask what skill they could monetize quickly. Teaching, consulting, digital services, reselling products, or freelance work are modern equivalents of biblical stewardship. The Proverbs 31 woman did business, traded goods, and multiplied resources while honoring God. She didn't wait for provision. She partnered with it. Prayer gave her clarity, but action produced income. There is also a subtle fear behind passive prayer: responsibility. When money comes through action, it demands discipline, decisions, and accountability. That's why some unconsciously prefer prayer-only approaches. They feel safer. Yet Scripture shows that God entrusts resources to those willing to manage them. Matthew 25's parable of the talents reveals that increase follows movement, not stillness. Those who acted were trusted with more. Those who waited lost even what they had. Understanding this reframes prayer from begging into alignment. Instead of asking, "God, give me money," the wiser question becomes, "God, show me where value meets need." That shift changes everything in business and in life. It moves the believer from hoping to building, from wishing to executing. And once that mental shift happens, a deeper biblical distinction begins to surface, one that separates provision from multiplication, which opens the door to the next principle. The biblical difference between provision and multiplication. One of the most misunderstood ideas in Scripture is the difference between provision and multiplication. Provision is God meeting today's needs. Multiplication is God expanding capacity for tomorrow. Many believers pray only at the level of survival, asking for enough money to get through the month. Biblically, however, God's pattern has always gone beyond maintenance. From Genesis to the Gospels, God reveals himself not just as provider, but as multiplier. Understanding this distinction changes how a person approaches money and business entirely. Provision keeps you alive. Multiplication builds legacy. In Exodus, manna fell daily, but it could not be stored. It was provision, not increase. Yet when Israel entered the Promised Land, God shifted the model. They were expected to plant, harvest, manage, and grow. That transition required maturity, discipline, and skill. Many people want Promised Land results while still living with wilderness habits. God never intended his people to live forever dependent on daily miracles. This pattern appears clearly in the parable of the talents, in Matthew 25. The master gave resources according to each one's ability and expected growth. The servants who multiplied were praised. The one who preserved without growth was rebuked. Notice that the issue was not morality, but productivity. The servant didn't lose the money, he failed to make money. Biblically speaking, God celebrates stewardship that produces increase, not just safety. Multiplication is obedience at a higher level. From a practical standpoint, this explains why some prayers feel unanswered. God may have already provided the seed, but the person is praying for harvest. Seed looks small, ordinary, even inconvenient. It may be a skill, a connection, extra time, or an idea that feels beneath their expectations. Yet Scripture is clear. Seed precedes harvest every single time. 2 Corinthians 9:10 reminds us that God gives seed to the sower, not to the observer. In modern terms, provision pays bills. Multiplication builds income streams. Provision covers groceries. Multiplication creates systems. This could look like starting a simple service business, learning a high-demand skill, or leveraging online platforms to solve problems for others. Books like The Richest Man in Babylon or The Millionaire Next Door echo biblical wisdom about delayed gratification and disciplined growth. God's way of multiplying money often looks practical, not mystical. Once this difference becomes clear, urgency begins to form. If God has already provided the seed, delaying action becomes costly. Multiplication requires movement, and movement requires clarity about the principle that unlocks speed. That principle, often overlooked, simple, and deeply biblical, is what quietly determines whether money stays stagnant or begins to grow faster than expected. The forgotten, biblical principle that unlocks fast money. One of the most powerful yet forgotten principles in Scripture is that increase flows toward value, not intention. Many people have good hearts, strong faith, and sincere prayers, yet they struggle to make money because they focus on need instead of usefulness. Biblically, God responds to alignment with purpose, not emotional urgency. When someone solves problems, meets needs, or creates order, provision follows naturally. Money, in both ancient and modern economies, moves toward those who carry value. This principle appears clearly in Genesis when Joseph interpreted Pharaoh's dream. Joseph wasn't praying for money, he was providing insight. His value, wisdom, clarity, and strategy instantly elevated him from prisoner to prime minister. The money, authority, and provision followed the value he delivered. Scripture shows again and again that God accelerates those who are prepared to serve at scale. Joseph didn't ask for favor. He demonstrated competence. That same dynamic still governs business today. Fast money does not come from shortcuts, but from positioning. When Jesus fed the multitudes, he didn't create abundance from nothing. He multiplied what was placed in his hands. The boys' lunch was small, but it was available. Availability precedes acceleration. Many people ask God to increase their income while refusing to make their skills visible or usable. Proverbs 18:16 teaches that a man's gift makes room for him and brings him before great people. Practically speaking, this means asking a different question. What problem can I solve right now? During the holidays, demand increases in almost every market. People need help, convenience, speed, and clarity. Teaching, freelancing, digital products, consulting, organizing, or reselling are modern expressions of biblical value creation. Platforms may change, but principles don't. When value meets demand, money responds quickly. Scripture never condemns making money. It condemns making money without wisdom or righteousness. Ecclesiastes 11:2 encourages diversification. not dependence on one outcome. This means that creating multiple ways to deliver value increases both stability and speed. Even Paul used tent making to fund his ministry, understanding that provision often comes through practical skill. He didn't separate calling from commerce. Once this principle is understood, the fear around money begins to fade. Money becomes a tool, not a test of spirituality. The question shifts from "is it God's will?" to "am I being useful?" That realization opens the door to something even deeper. Because knowing what creates fast money is one thing, but understanding how Jesus and Solomon approach business reveals why this system works so consistently across generations. How Jesus and Solomon understood business and cash flow. Jesus spoke about money and business more than most people realize, not because wealth was the goal, but because it reveals how systems work. He used parables about stewards, managers, vineyards, wages, investments, and returns because his audience lived inside an economic reality. Jesus understood cash flow as movement, not possession. Money that sits idle loses purpose, but money that circulates creates opportunity. In Luke 16, he makes it clear that faithfulness with small amounts of money determines access to greater responsibility. Solomon, on the other hand, represents the clearest biblical picture of wealth managed with wisdom. Scripture tells us that silver became as common as stones during his reign, not because of miracles, but because of structure. Solomon built trade routes, negotiated international agreements, diversified income sources, and invested in infrastructure. 1 Kings 10 shows that wealth flowed to him because value, peace, and stability flowed from him. His prosperity was the byproduct of order, not obsession. Both Jesus and Solomon reveal a crucial truth about business. Money follows systems. Jesus taught principles that produced sustainability. Solomon implemented strategies that produced scale. Neither chased money directly. Instead, they focused on stewardship, timing, and discernment. That's why Proverbs repeatedly links wisdom with riches, honor, and long life. Wealth in Scripture is not random, it is patterned. From a practical perspective, this means understanding cash flow instead of just income. Income is what comes in, cash flow is how money moves. Even today, businesses fail not because they don't make money, but because they mismanage timing. Solomon understood reserves, seasons, and cycles. Jesus taught readiness, accountability, and return on investment. These ideas still apply whether someone runs a small service business or manages digital income streams. Modern believers often separate spirituality from strategy, but the Bible never does. Learning how to manage expenses, price services, reinvest profits, and avoid unnecessary debt is not worldly. It is wise. Books like The Intelligent Investor or The Psychology of Money echo truths Solomon wrote thousands of years ago. Wisdom creates margin, and margin creates peace. Once someone sees how deeply biblical wisdom aligns with real-world economics, clarity increases. Money stops feeling mysterious and starts feeling manageable. But understanding systems is only half the journey. The real breakthrough happens when a person realizes that what they already possess right now can be turned into income faster than they imagined, which leads directly into the next principle, turning what you already have into immediate income. One of the most liberating truths in Scripture is that God rarely starts with what you don't have. He starts with what's already in your hands. When Moses questioned his ability, God asked, "What is that in your hand?" Exodus 4:2. That rod, ordinary and overlooked, became an instrument of power and provision. The same principle applies to money and business today. Immediate income often comes not from new resources, but from reimagining existing ones. Many people underestimate their skills because they feel common to them. Teaching, organizing, writing, fixing, advising, or even listening can be monetized when aligned with real needs. In biblical times, skills were trades. Today, they're services and digital assets. Proverbs 22:29 reminds us that skill brings a person before great opportunities. What feels small to you may solve a big problem for someone else, and that's where money begins to move. Practically, this could mean offering short-term services during high-demand seasons like the holidays. People pay for convenience, clarity, and speed. Tutoring, coaching, content creation, online assistance, product sourcing, or consulting are modern equivalents of biblical stewardship. Paul made tents while preaching because he understood that provision and calling can flow together. He didn't wait for support. He created value while serving purpose. Immediate income also comes from repurposing time intentionally. Idle hours are seeds that can either be wasted or invested. Scripture consistently links diligence with reward, not because God favors exhaustion, but because focus produces fruit. Ecclesiastes 10:10 teaches that wisdom makes effort ineffective. In modern terms, learning one in-demand skill quickly can unlock cash flow faster than years of unfocused effort. This is where mindset shifts matter. Instead of asking, "What job can I get?" the better question becomes, "What solution can I offer?" Business is simply organized service. When service meets urgency, money responds. Platforms, tools, and markets are just amplifiers. The real asset is the person willing to act. God multiplies motion far more often than intention. Once someone experiences this shift, turning what they already have into income, confidence grows quickly. Money stops feeling distant and starts feeling practical. But with opportunity comes timing, and Scripture is clear that missing the right moment can be costly. That's why understanding urgency, divine timing, and financial windows becomes the final key to acting before it's too late. Why speed matters. When God opens a financial window, Scripture makes it clear that not every opportunity lasts forever. Ecclesiastes 3 reminds us that there is a time for everything, and wisdom is knowing what time it is. Many people miss financial breakthroughs not because they lack faith, but because they hesitate when action is required. When God opens a window of opportunity, delay can quietly become disobedience. Speed, in biblical terms, is not panic. It is discernment in motion. Throughout the Bible, those who responded quickly experienced acceleration. When Elijah called Elisha, he left immediately. When Jesus called the disciples, they dropped their nets at once. These were not reckless decisions. They were responses to clarity. In matters of money and business, clarity often arrives before comfort. God rarely explains the full picture up front. He reveals the next step and watches who moves. Speed matters because demand has seasons. Holidays, economic shifts, and cultural moments create short windows where value is rewarded faster. Proverbs 10:5 says, "The one who gathers in summer is wise, but the one who sleeps during harvest brings shame." This isn't condemnation, it's instruction. Harvest time is not the moment to debate identity or overthink readiness. It's the moment to gather. From a practical standpoint, this means acting before everything feels perfect. Many people delay because they want certainty, but faith and certainty rarely coexist. Business rewards those who test, adjust, and refine in motion. Even in Scripture, progress followed obedience, not planning alone. Noah built before rain appeared. Joseph stored grain before famine arrived. Speed aligned them with provision. There is also a spiritual cost to hesitation. When people repeatedly ignore opportunities, sensitivity dulls, momentum fades, money follows those who respect timing. This is why urgency does not contradict peace. It protects it. Acting when God highlights an opening prevents unnecessary struggle later. Delayed obedience often feels spiritual, but it produces stagnation. Understanding this reframes urgency as stewardship. If God is highlighting a way to make money before the holidays, ignoring it is not humility. It's missed alignment. The question is no longer whether the principle works, but whether the person will act on it. And that realization naturally leads to reflection. What will you do differently now, while the window is still open? Everything you've heard so far points to one unavoidable truth. Money responds to wisdom, movement, and obedience. The Bible never calls you to chase wealth, but it does call you to steward opportunity. If you truly need $2,000 before the holidays, this is not the moment to hesitate or over-spiritualize inaction. God has already shown you how provision works, through value, timing, and responsibility. What remains is your decision to act. Ask yourself honestly, what skill, idea, or resource has God already placed in your hands that you've been postponing? What problem can you solve this week, not someday? Business is simply organized service, and service has always been God's pathway to provision. When faith aligns with action, money stops being confusing and starts becoming useful. This is also where courage matters. Applying biblical wisdom often requires moving before everything feels perfect. Readiness grows in motion, not in waiting. Scripture shows that God multiplies what is used, not what is hidden. Momentum is built one obedient step at a time, and clarity usually follows action, not the other way around. Write in the comments, "I honor God with my businesses," and watch how this powerful declaration begins to shift the course of your business and your finances from this day forward. If this message touched you, challenged you, or gave you clarity, don't let it stop here. Consider supporting our ministry through the link in the description. Subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you can keep learning how faith, business, and money truly work together.